All right. Hello, everyone. Let's just give a minute for folks to get into the room. I see the numbers are going up. So let's just give it a minute and then we'll get started. Cool. All right. Yeah. All right. So it looks like folks are still filing in, but we have a very, very special guest. Welcome, everyone. We have an awesome topic today, VMware-Broadcom licensing, the changes. We heard you. You've given us feedback on our webinars. Bring Nicholas back. Have him tell the story. Have him tell us what he's up to. And then, of course, hit on one of the hottest topics that we have in our industry today in terms of Broadcom. So I'm excited. Nicholas, welcome back. It's so exciting to have you back. Tell us what you've been up to.
Yeah, thank you, Mark, and hello, everyone. Happy to see you again or to talk to you again. And thanks, Mark, for having me for this SAM Best Practice webinar. Indeed, for 2 years or 2 years and a half, it was a joy to lead these calls and webinars. And I've moved in November. I've started a services company, so I've become a Flexera partner. And community champion. So now I've moved from a position where I was working on the product roadmap in product management and trying to influence and make things happen to be always more relevant for software asset management for the tool, to a position of consultant I had actually for 7 years before being product manager with Flexera, where I can, in the true life, I was also in the true life as a product manager, but even more true. I can experience and help customers being successful in their SAM projects with the Flexera technology. So that's a pleasure to be here. And indeed, today we will have a look to a hot topic. Do you want to introduce it maybe, or I can move on, Mark?
Yes,
okay, I will move
right in.
Okay, so yes, so today we will be talking about a hot topic, which is some changes, recent changes that happened with the VMware licensing after the Broadcom acquisition. The news have been shared back in December and then early 2024. And today we will go through the facts, what happened, and I'm going to share my screen and stop my camera. So hopefully you will see in there are multiple views, multiple frames in what you see on your internet browser. So try to see the frame where I'm sharing my screen. Today we are going to go through the facts of what has changed in terms of licensing for VMware, and we will see how you can adapt and understand these changes and what are the impacts for you. So hopefully now you should see the welcome page and also now the agenda page. The agenda where we will see first what is the context in Flexera One item. How do we manage VMware licensing without talking about the changes yet? Then we will see how Broadcom has introduced the first change, which was from perpetual licenses to subscriptions. There is a new bundle we will go through quickly, and a more complicated topic that we will go through, which is the processor to core licensing counting that has an impact on the global cost for your licenses. So we will see together with real use case what is the impact and how you can use a report that gives you this what if analysis or this comparison analysis. And we will finish with two topics. One, which is with or without changes, you can optimize VMware. So that's what we will go through, how you can optimize your ESX architectures to make sure that you are not paying the full cost now of the host while you are managing not enough numerous VMs. And finally, some news or references just to finish this call. Okay, so let's start with putting the context around VMware and Flexera One item. So VMware, nothing new and nothing incredible, is a leading virtualization technology used by almost all customers that allows to adapt IT resources to varying loads. So that's a very basic thing, and it has happened for the last 20 or 30 years. And the Flexera One item is getting and interacting with VMware technology in two contexts. The first one is reflecting the cluster host VMs hierarchies that you may see and that you will see in the small demos I will do. And these hierarchies are critical for the server applications licensing. Typically, the big elephant in the room is Oracle. If you use Oracle database or any option on an instance, which is on a virtual machine in a VMware cluster, you will need to pay for the full cluster or even vCenter or even all the VMware vCenter group. So this is very important to know if a virtual machine has a host and what is the configuration of the host. So that the first thing that Flexera item is collecting data from vCenter for. And the second thing, of course, and that's a little bit the topic today, it's also managing the compliance for VMware products. VMware products being, there is a change, a shift, but being vSphere with multiple editions, vCenter, some options, vSAN or NSX, or so that there are multiple modules, VMware modules that you can use. And of course, what Flexera One is doing is collecting the data from the clusters and from the vCenters and allowing you to compute your license consumption. So just to very high level and very simple, the vCenter integration is performed from the beacon or the beacons. If you have multiple VLANs where you need to have beacons. And the beacon that we see here is connecting to vCenter through the vCenter REST API and collects information around ESX servers, so the hosts, clusters, and both hosts and clusters are fully created from the vCenter API data, which means that don't expect the Flexera agent, for instance, to collect any of this information. This is 100% coming from the API calls. And then we get, with this integration, we get the links between the clusters, the hosts, and the VMs. So keep in mind, the virtual machines are expected to be inventoried from another source, typically the Flexera agent, or if there are Windows SCCM, it's also a good inventory tool. So this is important to not expect the vCenter integration to collect the virtual machine details. And the last item that is maybe less obvious is that vCenter, just like you can find in the console, vCenter console, information about the deployed applications and deployed editions, such as vSphere, is the vSphere Essential, Standard, or Enterprise Plus. The data that is delivered by the vCenter API contains also the activated or the licenses used for the ESX servers. And you will see a little bit later in ITAM, we have a view that gives all the details, including the license keys, which are not obfuscated. We can see all the details And in the end, ITAM or FlexNet Manager fabricates applications from this license information provided by the console. Okay, and there is a little star, information about vSphere and vCenter. In a project, we can state eventually some gaps on some activated options, such as vSAN. And there are ways when you're in a project to extend the data that you get from the vCenter API with, for instance, an Excel file. Typically, the VMware management team can provide you with a file that contains cluster by cluster which are the used, where vSAN is used, and you can, in the end, either fabricate applications or allocate the servers to the licenses so that you keep this information on eventually invisible installed application information. So in the end, the beacon gets this information, builds NDI files, just like the agent is building NDI files, and the files will update either the application server and the database if you're on-premise, or will be pushed by the beacon to the cloud instance through the application server, which is available in the Flexera cloud architecture. So hopefully you see a little bit. We start from the basics. How does it work and how do we collect information? Quickly, because we will spend more time on the changes and on the optimization, which are important topics. Quickly, we can see that hierarchies are reflected in many screens, are factored in the license consumptions, and maybe just to be live a little bit, I will connect to Flexera 1 and just show you the screens where you can find this information. So for people who are on premise, the navigation is different, but in the end, the data and the screens are the same. So if you go to the inventory and you go to the virtual devices and clusters, here we go. You will see that these hierarchies I was describing are reflected in this tree view, where you see which clusters. Now, this is not just for VMware. You may have Oracle clusters, Nutanix. If you integrate Nutanix data into ITAM, any hierarchy linking hosts to virtual machines to clusters is reflected in this screen, which also shows when there is no cluster typically. So here we have typically L-bars with partitions. Host IBM host with the L-bars. And if I go and close this one, you see back a host which has a number of virtual machines. Just to help you in the interpretation of the data, the last inventory date of the host is actually the last inventory date of the vCenter. And if you see within a cluster a host which has an older inventory date, it could reflect an issue with a host which is maybe eventually decommissioned and that you may take away. So there is a report we will see after, which is going very deep into possible issues, but this is good that you get this view and understand what we can see. And maybe a little trick here, this is the only place where you can open a cluster. Clusters are represented in the UI, and you get, in this cluster view, the hosts, nothing extraordinary. You get the virtual machines, which are linked to the hosts, and normally these links keep being updated. And not everybody knows, but you have the affinity rules, which are reflected in each of the hosts. Basically, if you see something red, it shows that a virtual machine has affinity on a host. If you see only green or gray buttons, it means just that you have, so I will maybe extend the size. If you see just green and gray, it means, this is currently on this host, this VM. Sorry, no, this one. and this one eventually can move to this host. So very interesting to know that we have the cluster affinity rules present and embedded and even used. There is an Oracle report that shows, what are these affinity rules and what could be a sort of a hot partitioning rule with Oracle if you take into account affinity rules. Okay, so that's the first screen where we see VMware data, and the second screen, which is more specific to VMware, and that hopefully everybody knows, but it's good to have a look, is called the VMware inventory screen. So this is one of these screens, and maybe I will type it. Cloud provider. Okay, so VMware inventory. Here we go. And VMware inventory will catch the data, but it's more an application view. So row by row, you will see which application on which ESX server or eventually server. You see vCenter here, applications. So basically here you get the list of VMware applications with their device. That very often would be an ESX server, particularly for vSphere. And you get additional information, which is quite advanced. And you will see that we can go one step further. But you see information such as number of processors. It has less and less interest. It was interesting up to recently. Number of cores or cores per CPU, and total number of core licenses. So things have a little bit changed. It's now computing and showing the consumption, inventory date, and you get which vCenter is on top of this architecture, and you get something interesting, which is the license key. So these are recent changes that happened with the VMware inventory screen. If you are on premise, you may not have yet these additional information. And you get here the license key and a little word on the obfuscation that you see here, all these dashes. If you give to the vCenter user, which is used by the beacon to connect to the REST API, there is a right, I don't remember exactly, but I think it's a right on license data or license key. If you get and give the right to the Flexera beacon user, which is used for the vCenter data collection, you will get the full key. Is it interesting to get a full key or to get only partial information? You may decide. You don't want to have the data exposed, but this is coming from the user, from the vCenter user. And then more information, which are interesting, which is what is the capacity of the license key and how many keys have been assigned, and eventually, questionate. And eventually, you get remarks and comments which say if the license is under allocated or over allocated. So we'll just decrease a little bit the size.
There's some questions in the queue.
Yeah.
And first, for anyone, please put your questions in the queue, and then we'll incorporate them as we go. But the first question looks like. Does the number of core licenses account for the minimum core per CPU for the new subscription license?
So to be 100% to be 100% transparent, I will show you a report which is including this minimum core. I'm sure that was the case, but I was not involved in this more recent development, and I would love to see, for instance. Let's say, a smaller configuration and seeing the minimum being applied. But I'm sure this is including it, indeed.
Great.
So that's
okay.
And maybe one way to check that, because the documentation is really good on the reports. You can. Maybe this one is not so properly displayed. Okay. So let's have a look to the properties and
Great.
the license. License costume key assign.
Yeah, keep the questions coming in. I'm seeing them. We'll work through them. This is great.
The number of core licenses required as per total of number of processor cores or a minimum of 16 per CPU.
Great.
So we have here the answer. So indeed, and that's part of the next step of this presentation. I will go through these topics just to go and talk about the new licensing and the optimization. Okay.
You okay if I run a couple more questions by you? It seems to be right on the spot. Sure. Does it calculate the minimum core requirements?
That's the same question. So minimum core requirements is the minimum 16 cores per CPU, but yes, it does. Indeed.
Got it. So we answered that one, there's a couple of nice to hear, Nicholas, again. Thanks for coming. This is awesome.
Thank you.
Yep. Will VMware updates be available to the on-prem via patched for older versions, or will an upgrade be necessary?
So, so I'm no longer a product manager, so I can the product manager, so I can I cannot answer to that. Cool. What I can tell you is that extending such a report, so yes, you can extend the report by creating a SQL report which is using the SQL code, but having this, for instance, this screen updated in an older version, let's say 2022 or 2, will be impossible because you need a mix of C++, which is managing the grid, and SQL. So I'm not aware of a fix. It could happen. I've seen some hot fixes which were fixing a screen, for instance, but I'm not aware of a plan to have that, while for sure it will be in 2024 R1 version, which is released this month. So maybe it's worth having a look to upgrading, and for many other reasons, it's good to upgrade your on-premise installation.
Agreed. Okay. There's still more, but we continue, and then I can come back. But keep the questions coming. We love the interaction.
Okay. Good. Okay. So indeed, you know, have the keys been under-assigned or over-assigned, you can get this information from the comparison between capacity and keys assigned. You can understand if there is an issue with an aging inventory date, which is also managed in another report I'm going to show. So these reports show you the VMware data. And one thing that I did not show yet, but of course, if you go to whatever license which is using the links between host and virtual machines, typically, if I go to all licenses, whoops, licenses, all licenses, and I go to the Oracle database, which is conveniently filtered, you will see this hierarchy and be able to interpret the hierarchies in the data that we see here. So typically, you see the clusters, you see the hosts. Unfortunately, here I have no cluster to show you. But if I go to the second page, you will see a cluster, the hosts, the virtual machine, the instance, which is in Oracle 18c. And you see, bad news, you need to pay for each of the hosts on this cluster. So the data is key in any license calculation when it comes to Windows Server, SQL Server, Oracle database, and so on. IBM, of course. Okay, so let's move on. Let's move on to the next slide, which is a little bit about the tips. Check having good vCenter data is crucial. And I've seen in my life so many cases where there were dramatic issues and nobody was aware because it's complicated to troubleshoot and to understand. And that's why, you know, when I was product manager, we have this SAM operations hub, which has been integrated. And in this hub, you get something like 20 reports that I had created as a consultant because they are the report that save your life when you don't know if the data quality is good. And just to show you, two of the reports are important and interesting. So if you go to Save Reports, you go to SAM Operations, and this data is demo data, which is quite poor, but you get this vCenter inventory troubleshooting. Here you will get, you know, all the complicated situations, such as within a vCenter, an ESX server is older, has an older inventory date than the other ones, or we have, so here it's very, very basic, but you have the errors, which show when there was an issue. We split between the data coming from IBM frequent scan and the data coming from the classical and scheduled vCenter data collections. So you get here very precise information, and there is this summary. Here we have one thing, which is, oh, be careful. So you have aging inventory, which is more than 14 days. But you may have actually multiple types of warnings in this report. And again, go to the documentation, which is saying a lot. And you will see the different types of issues that you may have and which can be reported by this service. Okay, so that's one report. And if I show the second one, which could be also useful, it's all about, you know, chasing the gaps. And when you import inventory data from vCenter, I showed you that we expect the virtual machine information to be already here, to have the virtual machines already inventoried. But this report, also one of these SAM operations hub report, is catching from the raw data that vCenter provides, is catching which virtual machines have been forgotten in the inventory. So it's very quick. You run this report if you have, let's say, 20 vCenters inventoried, and very quickly you will see, you know, where you have some gaps. I remember it's documented, but I think, you know, any VM which is more than, or any vCenter data which is more than 30 days old would not be shown. That the idea, or you can filter actually on this vCenter inventory here. So the idea that you can quickly understand what are your gaps, and sometimes it will be an expected gap. These are operating systems that you don't manage in inventory, or this could be true issues, and you get here the flat list of the virtual machines which are missing from the inventory. What is the cluster, what is the host, and you can quickly take action and deploy more agents. Okay, so that was the second report I wanted to show before I jumped into the changes. Okay, so let's move on. So first change, which is a trend in the market. You may even have seen that with Flexera. More and more publishers are moving from a perpetual license with eventualist maintenance to a subscription model. The mix of financial reason and maybe a good goodwill, which is or good intention, which is making sure that every customer has the latest and greatest technology available. And this is also a way of, and we can see that obviously with Microsoft. I've seen many companies using a Visio 2013 or 2010, great success. And suddenly Visio is part of the Microsoft 365, and you need to actually pay a subscription every year, which is a way more expensive approach than getting a perpetual license of an aging product. So that's a trend. Broadcom is doing it, and not the only ones. And the switch event will be the maintenance renewal. If you have, let's say, some VMware licenses which are not maintained, you can keep using another version, say 7, for instance. If you have some maintained licenses, which is probably a majority of your licenses, because this is a mission critical application, you will not be able to renew the maintenance, so you will need to switch to the subscription at the time of the maintenance renewal if you want to keep the maintenance. So your two options are to keep your old perpetual licenses and stop the maintenance if you just don't want to move to subscription, and eventually subscribe to new subscriptions for additional volumes. Or you can get a credit. To be honest, I have no clue of what is sort of a ratio that VMware, it's probably a negotiation that you may have with VMware for your legacy licenses, and you can move to subscriptions. So of course, it has a negative impact on yearly costs. The cost, I will talk about pricing from data I found online, but the impact on yearly cost is of course high because eventually you had perpetual licenses and 32% yearly maintenance pay, and you move to a subscription which is way higher than the 30% cost, which is combined with another change on the course. That's why it's harder to evaluate the impact, but you definitely have an impact. And it raises the risk of audits. If you get an email from you're a new Broadcom sales representative, and he says, could we meet to optimize your current contract? It's not a good sign, so be very, very cautious. And typically, these changing situations in large contracts are also an occasion for Broadcom to probably try to negotiate stronger terms for them, or eventually audit. So that's a change. It's not the first time Broadcom is doing that for a company, and there is a cost to that, and also to the risk. And the new bundling is another change, quite massive change. There was a way previously to access and to purchase standalone each of the products based on the processor pricing. And these products have been merged into two bundles, which are the vSphere Foundation and the VMware Cloud Foundation. And you see here that it's combining the products. So I've put the link to the VMware data sheet, which is giving these details. You can have a look. If you keep the maintenance, you have a migration path, which is again a topic for negotiation, but not an easy one, because rarely customers had standardized with vSphere Enterprise plus Kubernetes, Console Kubernetes plus vCenter, of course, added, but vSAN, for instance. And in the end, you move from a position where you had a part of the technology, and you are offered some eventually aggressive in pricing bundles. Typically, if you are a full stack tech user or tech stack user, and you had everything licensed with VMware as a standalone product, you will probably have a better financial condition. If you are using just vSphere and sometimes vSAN on some of the clusters, you will probably be a negative impact. I've taken time to find on a unique resource, VMware reseller, some cost. It's quite hard to, because the mix between a bundling core to processor change makes it complex to compare things. But here you see vSphere Foundation is 1,408 for 3 years. So it's for 400 something dollars a year per core. And when you see here, I found, for instance, a vSphere Enterprise Plus per core. I'm not sure how the reseller can sell it standalone, but it's 139 compared to the 400 that you have for 1 year. And so there is an additional price. And what explains this price? It's explained because you get vCenter, which was $6,000 per instance. It was a per server licensing. You get vSAN, which was a processor license for 6,400. So in the end, you get more for eventually a lower price if you make the sum. And we are going to discuss the processor to core change in a minute. But you definitely get more for maybe a good price, but maybe you didn't need so much. And that's all the issue with these incredible bundles that you get now through subscriptions, which are sort of pushing you into standardization on the full stack of the technology. I don't know if there are questions at this stage, Mark, but that's
yes, you have lots of questions.
And bundling applications.
Are you ready for some more questions?
Yeah, let's go.
I think you're 5 questions away from the record. So it's up to the team to meet the challenge. But here we go. Are you able to manage?
Yeah.
Are you able to manage the license? Are you able to manage license for non-vCenter Sphere products like NSX, Log Insight, or Realize Suite?
Yeah, so each product is a full story, and I will not be able to deep dive into all details, but there is not always, vRealize operations, for instance, is depending on the number of managed virtual machines, which is not the number of virtual machines, because you may manage a subset of your virtual machines. So as a consultant, what we will do very quickly is discuss with the VMware team, and it's always a quite simple picture that they have, even if inventory purely will not bring all information. They have a simple picture of which cluster is using so NSX, for instance, or how many VMs are managed by which vRealize. And it is not always obvious because vRealize, for instance, will be peak number of virtual machines. So we need to adapt to the more complex situations, knowing that I would say the very well controlled situation is vSphere, vCenter, eventually making sure that it's collected. And there are some other licensing or metrics which cannot be, so it's not all green, I would say. It's not all green.
Okay. And then next one, will the reporting and compliance be able to differentiate between typical term licenses found on the EA agreement and hosting licenses under the new VCSP program?
I'm not sure we have a recognition which is coming from the license doesn't tell its type from the inventory. So I think it's more about managing populations of ESX server. You know that you have used these licenses on these clusters and these other licenses on other clusters. And that's where you can use a very useful feature, which is the intelligent license restriction, where you say to a license, you are focused on this model, and you don't go outside of these clusters, for instance. But this is not a flag that you will get on the inventory side. So there is no, except managing I would say the populations of clusters, there is no pure automation that would split between the two types.
Okay. Let's see here.
My concern, my concern is that if we take all the questions, actually, maybe I should, that's what I was doing previously in the best practice webinars.
Sure.
I was taking all the questions and addressing them the next session, because otherwise we will not be able to finish.
Okay, no, that's fine. Yeah, you have a good quantity for that. Great. Okay.
Let's finish quickly and even.
Okay.
We can address the question. So processor to core, again, this is a trend. And this is due also to the evolution of the technology. Processors have more and more cores, which is sort of multiplying the computing capacity of the processors. And charging by processor was maybe not a good idea. And Microsoft, for instance, from 2016 on, for Windows Server, took a new rule, which was even more complex than the VMware rule. But the devil is in the details. Devil is in the details because we moved from a processor licensing, which was per CPU up to 32 gigabytes, cores per processor, and we moved to a new licensing, which is per core with a minimum of 16 core per processor. So this is a number of metrics which are changing at the same time, or there were a number of metrics. And I would say, unless you have a report, which is host by host computing or a powerful Excel sheet that you have with complicated calculations, it will be hard to anticipate what will be cheaper, what will be more expensive. So there will be winners and losers. But when the core per processor is high, the new licensing is negatively impacted, but also when it's low, because there is a minimum of 16 cores which is applied. And probably there will be, and there are more losers. I will show you some real data with a report that I've created, which is doing this analysis. Real losers, and this little picture is what I did actually for Windows Server a long time ago, but I took it again because it applies again. If you're a publisher, the best way to make more money is to complicate a licensing rule, and given the complexity, the number of cases, I'm sure there are people from VMware who have calculated on the typical data or cluster sets with ESX7 and so on. And I'm sure, the change is basically, the pure core calculation is adding 20% to the costs, and the bundling is adding probably 40% more versus what was really needed. So we get a higher cost. But you will see at the end of this presentation, you can optimize your VMware licenses. So it's maybe a good time to say, can we rethink our architectures to make sure that we are not going to to spend more with the new subscription model. So this is the core calculation, and a custom SQL report can help understanding the impact. So custom reports are SQL reports that services or partners can create. This is for on-premise customer, but you can anticipate that future features will include these reports. Just to take an example, 30 reports I created as a consultant have been productized. So the one I will show will maybe frustrate people around the cloud, but it's probably the direction that we'll take. We see that already there were some announcements in the VMware inventory page. So adding some analysis and optimization logic, just like I will show you in the next two reports, will come later. So that's good to see where we go. And if you're on premise, of course, you can contact me to immediately get this SQL report that can do a complicated job. So the rule I've taken on the report I'm going to show is that so perpetual licenses are amortized on 6 years. It could be 4, it could be 7, honestly. Typically, the VMware licenses are very stable. The VMware architecture are stable. And I've seen a lot of customers who have purchased in 2015 licenses and who keep maintaining them, or eventually don't maintain but purchase upgrade licenses. So I've taken this assumption that the perpetual license cost was 6 years. The maintenance is typically 33% of the, so I'm talking about the CPU licenses, of course. 33% of the license cost, that's what I've seen. And I've extracted from a VMware partner site some costs. Is it, what is important is the proportion of the costs. So if it's consistent, but you get a way better negotiation, you may get a 40% discount of each of these rows, but the proportion is important to understand, what we will see, which is running the report against a true data set. So typically, vSphere standard processor is $1,141. vSphere standard now is a 61, and to be honest, I was surprised, but I found some vSphere standard per core licenses, which is not the bundle, which is in contradiction with what I've seen in some sites, that you cannot keep the standalone products. You have to move to the, maybe it's in a transition phase. vSphere Enterprise Plus is 3,600 per processor and 139 per core. Okay, so this is to show the report. So I've created some, let's go to an on-premise instance, which has some more customized reports. And to be totally transparent, when I did the report, I probably messed up something. The 16 cores, I applied a minimum of 16 cores per server and not per processor. So the
All right, still there?
cost difference.
There we go. You cut out for a few seconds. Yep, yeah, you cut out for a few seconds, but I can hear you now.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so I'm going to show in this report, the two reports, and what I was saying, not sure if you got that, the report I created, which is a little bit of SQL, includes the 16 cores minimum, but I've messed up something which will be which will show even bigger difference between the previous licensing in processor and the new licensing in core. What I've applied is not a minimum of 16 core per processor, but a minimum of 16 core per server. So apologies for that, but you will see the principles are the same. The calculation and the consumption will even be, I would say, less in favor of the new licensing. So hopefully you see my screen now. And the idea that this report starts from the VMware screen code, which you can find in a function actually, and adds more information, such as the yearly cost for the CPU license, the yearly cost for the new core license. So this one is per core, this one is per processor. And then you get, the CPU consumption, the core consumption. So here we have no issue because it was indeed a 16 per processor, 16 core per processor configuration. And you see here the VMware cost for the CPU license, yearly cost, is here. The core cost is here. And you will see host by host, ESX per ESX, what the impact is. And then, you have the impact for the cluster. You have the impact for the cluster yearly. And you get, a comparison for the cluster and what is impact, and for the license and what is the impact, the global impact. So hopefully it makes sense. We'll just decrease a little bit. And you get here, 682 difference. So we will not go line by line. We have 10 minutes to go, but the report is basically taking one case, taking the other case, making the calculation, comparing both, and we see here the winners, the losers. Sorry. Typically, this host will consume $870 more than the host in the previous licensing for vSphere Enterprise Plus. But if you reverse the logic, you see that there are some. So maybe we can start with the highest impact. You see that some hosts have a $6,000 difference per year, which is quite big. And if I sort the licensing change impact for the host, you see that there are some winners. This is less expensive. I think it's partially due to my mistake in the report. Here, I should have applied 4 multiplied by 16. So the consumption should not be 32. It's one line to change in the report. I'm just sorry I missed it. So in the end, the impact that you can see, when it was a positive impact, it's probably due to the fact that I did not apply the minimum per processor of 16. And when the impact is maximum, this is for big servers which have many processors and cores per processors. And you see that in the end, you lose or you lose. So I will go fast because we not need to talk about optimization, but this report, modulo the little change I will do, will show and analyze host per host what is the impact. And if you switch to the fact that it's hard to find vSphere Enterprise Plus standalone in a subscription. I found the pricing, so maybe it's possible, but I've read everywhere that there was no choice. Maybe after the transition, it would be only this vSphere Foundation bundle. Here, just imagine this is not 139 but 409. The impact on costs will have two sources. One, which is a change in calculation from processor to core, and the other will be from the, if we assume you were just using vSphere and vCenter, but from many vSphere servers, the change will actually be here from 139 to 400. So keep in mind that you won't pay any longer your vCenter licenses because it's part of the bundle. But if you are not using vSAT, for instance, you will pay actually a bigger package for something you don't use. So that's what I wanted to show, and I will fix actually this calculation. And the 600 we were seeing will turn into probably 700 or 800 quickly. I ran this script on a true customer database this morning, and with the issue that is actually underestimating the new cost, the excessive cost, you will see that the difference was 350,000. So it's this is a realistic data set that I'm showing, even if it's quite big, 700. The rows correspond to applications on this axis. Okay, so I'm moving faster to the next report. Yeah, the winners I was showing. Let's focus now on optimization. The story is simple. You license the hosts to support virtual machines. So why would you have two VMs of 2 cores, or let's say 4 cores each, on a host which has 94 cores? So the simple and stupid story, which is actually not applied a lot today, is that you need to stack the VMs. And again, I'm going to show another report, which is an optimization report. And the idea is to have a high VM density. Just like this is a very important topic on the Windows Server or Red Hat. You need to stack your VMs to avoid paying maintenance and licenses or subscription for servers if they don't have all the resources actually used by virtual machines. So I will show this report, which is showing ES6 per ES6, the VM cores. Before I'm showing the report, if the report says, you have a massive waste on this host or on this cluster, don't blindly apply the recommendations. Typically, redundancy clusters any architecture has some redundancy, and this is normal that the active virtual machines are not appearing on this one. So this is always worth analyzing the report, checking with the team, and finding the true cluster that could be densified. So quickly, I'm going to this screen, and I'm going to go to the second report, which is, we say, killing two birds with a stone. One part is on the optimization, VMware optimization. So it will always count the number of cores of the hosts, count the number of cores of the VMs. The previous version that I had published in the community 2 or 3 years ago was actually converting the VM cores into processors equivalent. No need to do that any longer. So here, typically, that's quite simple. You use the current, yearly cost of vSphere Enterprise. I'm not talking about the bundling, but the logic will stay the same with bigger numbers. You have 32 cores. Okay, so here it's not very interesting. So I will just choose when there are actually VMs. I have a lot of VMs which are not with. Okay, so here you see. You have 2 cores, 32 installed. We can see which virtual machine is causing these cores installed. And typically, the report will always compare the number of cores and the number of VM cores. And when the number, I have to take, when the price per write is not empty to be sure we are seeing relevant data. So you see here, you will always get a comparison between the installed cores and the processors. Again, I just switched this report to the new mode, which is the per core licensing, but you can do that in Excel. This is complex, but the data will change every day. So this is good to have this report, which will, in the end, compare the cores with the license cores. And I have to apply this minimum of 16 just to be sure that we have the right comparison. So this is an optimization report, and then you can understand the waste for the cluster. Don't think I put this column here, but you can have the waste for the cluster or the total waste for the full portfolio, and you see that very quickly the number will be in hundreds of thousands. It's a matter of analyzing and taking the recommendations of the report based on the waste value and making sure that you do the right job. The second thing the report does is okay. So second thing the report does, and I will rush a little bit. Managing license keys is a pain for VM admins. So the solution that supports this report allows to manage the license keys. Hopefully you hear me well. This custom property is called license key, nothing very extraordinary. You can then link your purchase with the servers which are associated with this license key. And I'm not sure why it's so slow. These servers, there is a native link between the assets and the license key. And then we'll go and find which are the servers, if the server is associated with the license key, what is the license key associated, what is the license key inventory. So this information is from purchase. This information is from the inventory. And you will have a quick view on, is the matching correct or not. And you can here, manage the sort of compliance of managing correctly the license keys. Did you deploy the right license keys with the right servers? This report does also this key analysis based on the solution. Okay, so I will rush a little bit. This is expanding the PowerPoint.
I was going to say, yeah, we're at the top of the hour. Do you want to finish up on one, or?
Yeah, I will finish just with the last slide, which is news and reference.
Sounds good. Okay.
So, in terms of news, FlexNet Manager on-premise 2024 R1 will be released end of June. It contains everything that you saw in the cloud version or in Flexera 1 item since I think it was November, end of November 2023, which was the R2. So you have the big items I would mention are the SKU browser. You can now look for any SKU related to SQL Server Enterprise Edition. So this is a browser where you get a 100 row view. The idea was not to give all the SKUs to anyone. So you can punctually find the SKUs that correspond to your product, or look for your SKU and understand what is the product. And in the end, you can, with this SKU browser, eventually create licenses. I've seen people who create purchase with a fake SKU when they don't have the true one, which will accelerate the creation of licenses. So this is something that was on top of the request. This is already on the cloud instances, the procurement menu, and so on. So Oracle Enterprise Business Suite is now verified, just like Oracle Database, middleware, Java. You have this Enterprise Business Suite data collection, which is now verified by Oracle and reliable. And there were multiple announcements on the Kubernetes agent nearly every month. So the data collection for Kubernetes has been enhanced. I will just give two references, which is the SAM Best Practice Hub in the Flexera community. You will see it has not moved a lot since I left, but you have the 24 sessions that you can see for the SAM Best Practice webinars, which are recorded and where all the details are provided. That's the first reference. And the second one I wanted to show is the NRSAM Consulting blog, where you can, so this is the website of my company, and you will see there are many posts which help you starting from the bottom and moving up. So this article, which link is in the PowerPoint, contains, I will zoom a little bit, the list of posts which start you from the bottom of the Maslow pyramid of SAM. So having the right foundations, inventory is good, you have a good inventory tool, and then you will see each of these documents allow you to deep dive into a topic which is actually described in many details, how to optimize your named user consumption. So have a look to this blog. That can be useful. Okay, so I think that's it for today. Sorry, I've been a little bit over time. Thanks for your time and attention. I don't know if I don't think we will take more questions. We will address the questions in the next SAM Best Practice webinar.
Great.
Thank you all.
Awesome presentation. It is great to have you back. Great topic, great questions. Same time, same channel next month. Looking forward to seeing everyone. Thank you again.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.